Is responsive design overrated? In the last few videos, I've been talking a lot about mobile applications, but I wanted to touch on responsive design. Is it a real alternative than building a mobile app, or is it just required on any web app these days? I'm Matt Grace, Managing Director of Flying Donkey. Let's get into it. Alright, before we jump into this video on responsive design, I want to ask if this is of value to you. Please hit that subscribe or like button below. If there's other content you want me to cover around SaaS or SaaS development, please put a comment below and I'd happily have a look and respond for you. Alright, let's jump into it. What is responsive design? Responsive design is where you make a website responsive to different screen sizes. Therefore, if you bring a website up on, say, a mobile phone, it shrinks to fit down onto that phone. But if you bring the same web page up on, say, a desktop computer, it's going to stretch and use the rest of the screen. There's a few differences here you can see between mobile and desktop, generally with real estate. Therefore, things like menus are optimized on your mobile phone. You've probably seen the burger icon or those 3 dots in the mobile app, whereas those won't be present on a desktop application. This is all in regards to responsive design and making sure that your application can be viewed on as many platforms as possible. The importance of having responsive design. It's probably obvious, but it's worth stating. Obviously, you want your website to look the best for every consumer. And every consumer is going to look at it through a different lens, i.e. different device. And therefore, you need to make sure that your responsive website works on their device. Having it shrink right down to work on a mobile phone and all the way up to a large 4K monitor, this means that your consumer is going to get the best result at the end of the day. For your SaaS product or your application, this is going to mean that you're going to potentially get the best return on investment because you're going to have the best and happy customers. Having the best customers will also help you reduce churn, and this is why responsive design is really important. A quick side note here on responsive versus adaptive design. Responsive essentially is completely dynamic, where it shrinks and grows to any screen size that you do. Generally, this is done through the use of calculations so that divs and grids are moved as required for the screen size. Adaptive, on the other hand, is really fixed to each device that you want to support, generally 3 to 4 sizes. Adaptive was all the rage a little while ago, but generally speaking, responsive has taken over as it's been shown as being the more preferred option to both implement and for customer experience. Alright, I've got 11 things to show you around responsive design, so let's jump into it. Number 1, SEO friendly. I'll quickly run through this one, but essentially being responsive means you can react and show data in the best way on the best devices. Being SEO friendly today really means that you need to be targeting all devices, and particularly mobile phones. People use their phones more than ever, and potentially they might come across a website in a bit of a browsing session on their mobile phone, and they need to be responsive to be able to see the content in the correct way. You may have a SaaS application that can really only be used on a desktop computer, but they may find your site on their mobile phone. This is where SEO comes into it, and therefore responsive design is very important for SEO. Number 2, better user experience. I mentioned this in the intro, but essentially responding to each of your consumers' devices and showing your site in the best way to each consumer means they're going to have a better user experience. This translates to happier customers and less churn and better return on investment. It's a bit of a no-brainer, but obviously responding to their device is going to give them a better user experience. Number 3, increased exposure to all audiences. I mentioned this previously as well, mobile usage is going through the roof. Everyone is on their phone almost every day. Desktop usage is down, laptop usage is down, but mobile phones is up. Now, while mobile phones are really good for browsing, obviously they're not very good for your actual day-to-day job of doing things. And this is where responsive design really shines. It's about being responsive in your website so that you can show yourself on the mobile phone, and then have the wider application work on a desktop app when you need to edit or view data in a larger screen. Number 4, site loading times. Again, being a responsive site, you're going to adapt and change to each of the user's resolutions, and this means at smaller screen sizes, you're going to be showing smaller content, smaller pictures, and smaller areas you need to load. This results in faster load times, which obviously again means better outcomes for your consumers. Higher conversion rates, again, follows on from this. Essentially, happier customers are going to be more better to convert because they can see the screens on the devices they're on, they can click that call to action, and they can fill in the forms as required. They're not having to pinch and zoom and scroll around on the screen, and therefore conversion is much more frictionless and it can happen far easier. Number 6, better tracking and Google rankings. I touched on this in number 1, which is SEO, but essentially Google is rewarding sites that are mobile friendly, and essentially responsiveness is the best way to respond to this. When mobile-only websites were a bit of a fad 5 to 6 years ago, responsive is really the way to go. Single website, respond to your users, show it on a mobile phone, show it on a desktop. That's what's supported by Google, and that's what's rewarded in the search results. Number 7, quicker development time. Now this is in comparison to building individual sites for individual devices, like they used to do with mobile-only websites. You would have seen these with the M.dot websites that you would have seen. Building a single code base with responsive design is faster than building multiple sites, and as I've said, it's SEO and Google positive, and therefore it really needs to be done these days. Following on from that, tip 8 obviously is easier maintenance. And obviously if you have a single code base with a responsive piece of code, it's going to be easier to maintain than multiple websites. Maintaining a mobile only site and a desktop only site is far more challenging than maintaining a responsive website. Number 9, lower bounce rates, and I touched on this in the conversion one, but essentially here, if people are seeing the content in the right sizes and the right screens with the right content, they're going to engage and convert more often, and therefore they're not going to bounce from your pages as regularly. This is just as applicable to SaaS products where you're trying to implement a feature or deliver a feature to a client. You want to use the application and get the most value out of it. You don't want them to simply open the feature, be confused or confuddled by the sizing of the text or the images, and leave the application. Number 10, organize your content better. Obviously, if you're able to shift and move your content based on the screen size, it's going to be easier to organize the content. Again, this will flow into a better user experience, and this is where really the responsiveness is a no-brainer. Finally, number 11, opening more avenues for social sharing. A lot of social sharing is actually done on mobile phones, but potentially viewed on other products. It's also important to understand that someone may share this from a tablet and view it on a mobile phone, or share it from a mobile phone and then view it on a desktop. It's important to know that your application will have to show on all of these devices, and responsive is a great way to achieve this. Alright, we've run through all the positives of building responsive websites and everything they're going to give you back from the investment that you make. So how do you build a responsive website? Here at Flying Donkey, we follow our standard procedure, which is where we do prototyping and design up front. Now, in this stage, we're generally going to design at least 2 to 3 variations of the site at different sizes. This is all going to be based on what we consider to be a grid system. We generally use the Bootstrap grid system because it's extremely good at being responsive. This grid system allows us to put various items into different grid squares on the screen, and they will shift and move as the screen size changes. This will be in comparison to our prototyping that we've done and got approved by the client of the different screen sizes. Generally speaking, we're going to take the largest and smallest screen they want to support, whether that be a large desktop screen and a small mobile screen, and then something in the middle, a tablet or a laptop that they also want to support. And then between this, we'll work out on the grid system how it works and how it should shift and move, and that will give us our responsive points to target. Alright, so you've designed and built a responsive website. How do you test the responsive website actually works? Well, there's a few tools I want to run through here that are really good on checking a website to see if it's responsive and how it's responding to each of the different screen sizes. I start off with a third-party application that's really popular over the last 5 to 10 years, and that is Hotjar. Hotjar allows you to look at a heat map of your site in various different screen sizes and see where users are clicking and interacting. It really shows you elements around time on screen, and you can also interface it with A/B testing to show different screens and how different users are responding. Hotjar is a paid third-party application, and we really recommend this in extreme circumstances. But essentially it gives you a really good overview of how your users are engaging with your site, and you can see how they're engaging on the different responsive sizes. Other tools. If you're not going to go all the way with Hotjar, there's a couple other tools we'd recommend. The Inspect tool on Google Chrome is really good. Simply hitting F12 and hitting down to the responsive tablet on the left-hand side will allow you to select the screen size you want to see in front of you. Chrome will then draw up the site up this size. You can pick an iPhone 4S, which surprisingly has a very small screen, or you can pick a large 4K display. It will then re-render the screen as if that device had come to the screen, and you can see it in these different sizes. Here at Flying Donkey, our developers use this very regularly to make sure what they're developing is working on all these different devices, because it's simply not plausible for us to have every single device here. Simulating the device usage is not perfect, but it is 99% correct. And this will give you a really good idea of how your responsive site is working. If you're getting a bit confused by the Google Chrome tools, there's a really good website called Responsinator where you can put in a URL and it will show you all the different sizes of responsive websites. Again, this is just going to give you feedback and showing you at the different sizes what your website looks like and making sure they all work the best way they can. Alright, so now I've run through all that, hopefully you've got a better idea around responsive design, some of the key tips and features you need to look for, and how to check if your site is responsive. I hope you can see from this thing that the responsive design is definitely not overrated, and it's a really key critical aspect of your website. If you can't show it in your best light to all users on all products, you're going to be alienating at least a portion of your audience and not getting the best results that you can. Here at Flying Donkey, all of the websites and products that we build are responsive, and it's for this exact reason. You want to engage as many consumers in the best light you can, and responsive websites allow you to do that in a cost-effective manner. If you're looking to build a SaaS platform and you want to make sure it's responsive both on its exterior pages and internal SaaS platform pages, reach out to us here at Flying Donkey and we'd be happy to assist.